You've been told your whole life that being smart is an advantage, but when it comes to dating, your intelligence has become your biggest liability and you can't figure out why every relationship ends the same way, while you're friends with half your IQ are getting married and starting families. You're sitting there wondering if there's something fundamentally wrong with you for having standards that seem impossible to meet. Socrates understood this paradox 2,500 years ago. He knew that wisdom comes with a price that most people aren't willing to pay. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly why intelligent men struggle in modern dating and why choosing to stay single might be the smartest decision you'll ever make. So stick around, because this truth will change everything you thought you knew about relationships. Socrates declared that the unexamined life is not worth living. But what he didn't tell you is that the examined life often leads to loneliness. When you're the type of man who constantly questions your motives, analyzes your patterns, and reflects on your choices, you develop standards that most people simply cannot meet. While other guys are swiping right on anyone with a pulse, you're sitting there wondering if this person can even hold a meaningful conversation about life's deeper questions. The self-awareness becomes both your greatest strength and your relationship kryptonite. You see through the superficial games that keep most couples together. The intelligent man lives in perpetual analysis mode. Every interaction gets filtered through layers of logic and reasoning that would make most people's heads spin. You notice when someone's words don't match their actions. You catch the subtle inconsistencies in their stories. You recognize the red flags that others ignore because they're blinded by attraction or desperation. This heightened awareness means you can't just turn off your brain and enjoy the simple pleasures of casual dating like everyone else seems to do. You're cursed with the ability to see people for who they really are rather than who you want them to be. Society tells you that overthinking kills relationships, but Socrates would argue that underthinking kills your soul. The price of living an examined life is that you become incompatible with those who refuse to examine theirs. You'd rather be alone with your thoughts than trapped in a relationship with someone who can't think beyond their next Instagram post or weekend plans. This isn't arrogance. It's the natural consequence of developing your mind while others remain content with mental mediocrity. Socrates carved know thyself into the temple of Apollo, but he forgot to mention that self-knowledge makes you utterly undateable in today's world. When you truly understand your own flaws, triggers, and emotional patterns, you develop an uncomfortable honesty that scares people away. Most women are used to men who lie about their feelings, hide their insecurities, and pretend to be someone they're not just to get laid. But you're the guy who admits when you're wrong, acknowledges your limitations, and refuses to play the fake confidence game that modern dating demands. Self-awareness creates impossible standards because you know exactly what you bring to the table and what you need in return. You understand your communication style, your love languages, and your non-negotiables in ways that make casual dating feel like a waste of time. While other guys are busy trying to impress women with flashy cars and rehearsed pickup lines, you're sitting there knowing that real connection requires two people who actually understand themselves first. This deep self-knowledge makes you realize that most people are walking around completely clueless about who they are. The cruel irony is that the more you know yourself, the lonelier you become in a world full of people who are strangers to themselves. You can't connect with someone who doesn't even know what they want, let alone what they need. Your self-awareness becomes a filter that eliminates 90% of potential partners before you even meet them, leaving you with the choice between settling for less or staying single. Socrates famously said, "I know that I know nothing." And this wisdom creates a dating paradox that destroys your chances with most women. The more you learn about psychology, human nature, and relationship dynamics, the more you realize how little everyone else knows about these things. You start seeing through the manipulation tactics, the emotional games, and the shallow strategies that people use to get what they want. This knowledge makes you immune to the usual dating tricks, but also makes you incredibly difficult to impress or seduce using conventional methods. Wisdom teaches you to recognize patterns that others miss completely. You spot the narcissistic tendencies, the daddy issues, and the emotional baggage from miles away because you've studied human behavior. and understand how trauma shapes personality. While ignorant men fall for the same toxic patterns over and over again, you're stuck being the guy who sees the red flags before anyone else does. This foresight protects you from disaster, but also prevents you from experiencing the blissful ignorance that makes dating fun for everyone else. The wise man understands that most relationships fail for predictable reasons: incompatible values, poor communication, unresolved trauma, and unrealistic expectations. This knowledge makes you incredibly selective because you know what works and what doesn't. In long-term partnerships, you can't unknow what you know about attachment styles, love languages, and relationship psychology. So you're forced to watch other people make the same mistakes you've already learned to avoid. Wisdom becomes a curse that separates you from the beautiful stupidity of young love. Socrates built his entire philosophy on questioning everything. But this habit will absolutely murder your dating life in ways you never imagined. When your default mode is to analyze, scrutinize, and dig deeper into every statement someone makes, romance dies a quick and painful death. She says she loves long walks on the beach. You're wondering why she needs nature to feel peaceful and what childhood experiences shaped this preference. She mentions her ex was controlling. You're already mapping out her relationship patterns and attachment style instead of just enjoying the conversation like a normal person would. Critical thinking turns you into a human lie detector that nobody wants to be around. You catch the inconsistencies in her stories. You notice when her actions don't match her stated values. You see through the carefully crafted social media persona to the insecure person underneath. While other guys are falling for the fantasy version she presents, you're busy deconstructing every layer of her personality like some kind of relationship archaeologist. This analytical approach might make you right about people, but it also makes you incredibly exhausting to date. The tragedy is that questioning everything prevents you from experiencing the magic of romantic illusion that keeps most couples together. Love requires a certain amount of willful blindness, the ability to overlook flaws and focus on potential rather than reality. But your Socratic nature won't let you ignore the obvious problems that everyone else seems perfectly happy to pretend don't exist. You can't turn off your critical thinking just to enjoy someone's company, which means you're destined to remain single. While less intelligent men find happiness in blissful ignorance, Socrates believed that self-examination was the highest virtue, but he lived in a time before dating apps and social media turned relationships into a superficial numbers game. The harsh reality is that most people today are running from the very self-awareness that would make them better partners. They'd rather swipe through endless options than spend 5 minutes examining why their last 3 relationships ended the same way. This creates a dating pool filled with people who are allergic to introspection and terrified of anyone who might force them to look in the mirror. The average person builds their entire identity around avoiding uncomfortable truths about themselves. They use alcohol, social media, work, and serial dating as distractions from the inner work that real relationships demand. When you show up as someone who has done this work, someone who knows their patterns, triggers, and growth areas, you become a threat to their carefully constructed denial system. Your presence alone forces them to confront their own unexamined life, which makes them uncomfortable and ultimately drives them away from you. This is why intelligent men often feel like aliens. In the dating world, you're seeking depth in a culture that celebrates surface-level connections. You want to discuss childhood trauma, life philosophy, and emotional patterns while everyone else wants to keep things light and fun. The unexamined person sees your depth as heaviness rather than richness. They mistake your authenticity for negativity and your wisdom for pessimism. You're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers, and chess players rarely find worthy opponents in a world full of checkers enthusiasts. Socrates taught that virtue is the highest good, but living by this principle in modern dating makes you look like a crazy person to everyone around you. While other men are chasing physical attraction and instant gratification, you're sitting there evaluating potential partners based on character, integrity, and moral alignment. This makes you the weirdo who asks deep questions on first dates. Instead of trying to get her back to your place, your friends think you're overthinking everything, when you're actually applying the same standards to relationships that you apply to every other important decision in your life. The pursuit of virtue means you refuse to compromise on the values that matter most to you. You won't date someone who lies to their parents, treats service workers poorly, or lacks basic empathy for others. These standards eliminate most of the dating pool because virtue is rare in a culture that rewards selfishness and celebrates instant gratification. While less discerning men are happy to overlook moral red flags for the sake of companionship, you understand that character flaws don't improve with time. They amplify under pressure. This commitment to virtue creates a lonely path because most people mistake your standards for arrogance or impossible expectations. They don't understand that you're not trying to find someone perfect, you're trying to find someone who shares your commitment to being a good person. The intelligent man knows that attraction fades, but character endures. So you'd rather be single than settle for someone whose values fundamentally clash with yours. This isn't pickiness, it's wisdom applied to the most important decision you'll ever make. Socrates used the cave allegory to describe people trapped by illusions. And modern dating is the perfect example of this philosophical prison in action. Most people are chained to shallow expectations about what relationships should look like, based on movies, social media, and cultural programming that has nothing to do with reality. They're watching shadows on the wall, believing that love means constant happiness, perfect chemistry, and effortless compatibility. You're the guy who escaped the cave and saw the truth, that real relationships require work, compromise, and genuine compatibility beyond physical attraction. The problem is that once you've seen the light outside the cave, you can't go back to believing in the shadows. You understand that Instagram couples are performing happiness rather than living it. You know that Hollywood romance is designed to sell tickets rather than teach relationship skills. You recognize that dating culture promotes consumption over connection. This knowledge makes you incompatible with people who are still trapped in the cave, believing that their next swipe might lead to effortless eternal bliss. Society punishes you for refusing to play along with the collective delusion that modern dating represents. When you point out that apps promote superficial judgments and instant gratification, people call you bitter or old-fashioned. When you suggest that real love requires time and effort to develop, they accuse you of being unromantic. The intelligent man becomes an outsider in his own culture, forced to choose between pretending to believe in illusions or accepting the loneliness that comes with seeing things as they really are. Socrates perfected the art of dialogue, the back-and-forth exchange of ideas that reveals truth through questioning and deep conversation. But try explaining this to a woman who thinks philosophical discussion is what happens. When she asks whether pineapple belongs on pizza, you're the guy who wants to explore the meaning of life, discuss personal growth, and dive into the complexities of human nature. While most people are content talking about the weather, celebrity gossip, and their weekend plans, this fundamental mismatch in communication styles makes you feel like you're speaking a different language than everyone else. Small talk feels like intellectual torture. When your mind craves substance and depth, you sit through conversations about Netflix shows and social media drama while internally screaming for someone to ask you what you think about consciousness, mortality, or the nature of happiness. The irony is that these surface-level interactions are designed to create connection, but they have the opposite effect on intelligent men. They highlight just how alone you are in a world that mistakes chatter for communication. You'd rather sit in comfortable silence than engage in meaningless verbal ping-pong. The tragedy is that modern dating culture has reduced conversation to entertainment rather than exploration. People want to be amused rather than challenged. They seek validation rather than growth through dialogue. Your attempts to create meaningful exchanges are often met with confusion or discomfort because most people haven't developed the intellectual muscles required for deep conversation. You become the guy who kills the mood by asking follow-up questions, the one who makes people think when they just want to feel good about themselves. Socrates believed that authenticity was the foundation of a life worth living, but he never had to navigate Tinder profiles and first date performances that would make Broadway actors jealous. In today's dating world, authenticity is the kiss of death because everyone is playing a character designed to maximize their appeal to the largest possible audience. You show up as your real self, flaws, struggles, and genuine personality intact, while everyone else is performing an optimized version of themselves that bears little resemblance to who they actually are. This makes you the weirdo who admits to having bad days instead of pretending life is perfect. The cost of being authentic is that you eliminate yourself from consideration by people who are attracted to masks rather than faces. When you refuse to play the game of pretending to be someone you're not, you automatically lose to guys who are willing to lie about their interests, fake their personality, and present themselves as whatever they think women want to see. Your honesty becomes a disadvantage in a marketplace built on deception. Your vulnerability gets punished in a culture that rewards emotional unavailability and manufactured mystery. This creates an impossible choice between betraying yourself to find companionship or staying true to yourself and remaining alone. The intelligent man understands that any relationship built on a false foundation will eventually collapse, but this knowledge doesn't make the loneliness any easier to bear. You're forced to watch less authentic people find connection while you remain single, not because you're unlovable, but because you refuse to pretend to be someone else to earn love. Socrates taught that wisdom means knowing the difference between what you can and cannot control, and the wise man learns to control his response to an uncontrollable dating market. You reach a point where you realize that staying single isn't a failure. It's a strategic choice made by someone who values peace over drama, authenticity over performance, and self-respect over social approval. While society pressures you to couple up at any cost, you understand that the wrong relationship is infinitely worse than no relationship at all. This isn't giving up. It's choosing quality over quantity in the most important area of your life. The decision to embrace solitude comes from understanding that loneliness and being alone are two completely different experiences. Loneliness is what you feel when you're with the wrong person pretending to be happy. Being alone is what you choose when you refuse to compromise your values for companionship. You'd rather spend your evenings reading philosophy, pursuing meaningful goals, and developing yourself than waste time managing someone else's emotional chaos or pretending to enjoy conversations that bore you to tears. This choice requires courage that most men lack. Society will tell you that something is wrong with you for choosing to be single, but Socrates would recognize this as the ultimate act of self-knowledge and self-respect. You've examined your life, understood your values, and made a conscious decision about how you want to spend your limited time on earth. The wise man doesn't settle for less than he deserves. He creates a life so fulfilling that adding another person becomes optional rather than necessary. This is true freedom in a world full of people trapped by their desperation for validation. So here's the question that will determine the trajectory of your entire life. Are you going to continue apologizing for your intelligence and standards? Or are you finally going to embrace the fact that being a thinking man in a thoughtless world naturally leads to solitude? Socrates died for his commitment to truth and wisdom. But you don't have to die alone if you understand that choosing solitude over settling isn't giving up on love, it's refusing to accept counterfeits. The smart man who stays single isn't broken or defective. He's simply operating at a frequency that most people can't match. If this video opened your eyes to why your intelligence might be your dating kryptonite, hit that subscribe button and join a community of men who refuse to dumb themselves down for anyone.